Well, here we are, chapter 14. We're at the end of this journey in the summer. Juvenile corrections. Remember the golden rule, everybody. All right, so thought I'd crank you guys up. Why not, right? Some of you have seen this, but won't let me play. Oh well, that happens to live lectures. Anyways, I guess back to business. All right, so corrections. Juvenile corrections. And the question here is this an end of an era or just a beginning? I'll let you draw that conclusion. Perhaps you be better prepared to answer that at the end of the lecture or the end of the class. Oh, I just want to remind you that I am recording in a faculty hallway. I do have the door closed, but there's a lot of people outside and making a lot of noise, so I apologize. All right, so corrections. A brief history. Reform schools. Well, I should probably go back and say, and I repeated this in a lot of classes. I apologize for that. We need to know where we came from to get a better grip and understand where we are going. And history, often repeats itself. So can we create positive history and have it positively create itself? Well, that's our plan. All right, so back to what I was saying. A brief history. Reform schools. The first state-sponsored reform school opened in Massachusetts in 1848. The institution resembled a prison. European-style reform school introduced a small residential arrangement, breaking down structural barriers so that staff and inmates could interact, providing a more intimate setting for treatment. So we started off just by throwing them in a jail, and then we started realizing, hey, again, it's time to reform. The first of the European-style reform schools was the Lancaster Industrial School for Girls in Massachusetts, which was established in 1854. All right, so the first juvenile court, where was that? Well, in 1899, the first completely separate juvenile court was established in Chicago, Illinois. Well, there it is. There's the picture of it. So, an important court case. We're jumping all the way fast forward. Kent versus the United States, 1966. In a case involving transfer jurisdiction, the juvenile defendant is entitled to certain essential due process rights, such as, imagine that, a hearing. Instead of just grabbing them and throwing them in jail, they're entitled to a hearing. They're entitled to an attorney. See where the trend is going. They're entitled to access to records involved in the transfer. They're entitled to a written statement of reasons for the transfer. Another one, in Regault, 1967, a year later, in proceedings that might result in commitment to an institution, juveniles have the right to be let known of what charges it is they're being charged with. A right to counsel again. They have a right to question witnesses. This is very resemblant to that of an adult system. The protection against self-incrimination. Isn't that the Fifth Amendment? Plead the Fifth. All right, so McIver versus Pennsylvania, 1971. The Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment does not require jury trials in juvenile court. And I've mentioned throughout my lectures, I've never seen a juvenile trial have a jury. Again, they do, but I've never seen it, and I've been to hundreds of them. It's always just a judge. But it forbids states from denying any person life, liberty, or property without due process of law, or to deny any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. All right, so youth in gangs while incarcerated. It's really no different, when they're locked up, and we can't, as a society, sometimes we have to lock kids up. They're crimes are so vicious and heinous that they have to be in prison for a select period of time, sometimes for a very long period of time. But there's gangs. All states in nearly all large cities reported youth gang problems, of course. We're not immune to that here in North Georgia. The latest National Youth Gang Survey estimated that 99% of large cities have reported multiple years of gang problems. Atlanta is getting run over, and it's spreading out. The activity does not stop in jail. Just because they get incarcerated doesn't mean that their gang activity and their allegiance ceases. They're not sitting around playing Monopoly. Maybe they are, but they're still gangs. According to the FBI, a gang is, and here's a definition, a criminal enterprise having an organizational structure acting as a continuing criminal conspiracy which employs violence and any other criminal activities to sustain the enterprise. And that can mean anything. So somebody from the Crips gets locked up. Okay, they're 17, 16, they're in jail. Do you think they really changed their way of life? Well, you would hope they can, but realistically, most of them don't. Some interesting statistics. So according to the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the FBI, juveniles accounted for 12% of all 2015 arrests and 12.7% of all 2015 violent crime arrests. Juveniles, 12% of all arrests. That's a problem. Most juvenile arrests were for property crime offenses. More than 90% of the cases handled by juvenile courts are for delinquent offenses. Yep. The remaining cases are for status offenses, acts that are considered offenses only when they are committed by juveniles. And we discussed this, being truant, running away, and things of that nature. All right, some more data. Juvenile corrections functions are placed in various state agencies by the different states. I apologize. I do have my email turned off. I don't know why it still pops up. Operating budgets for agencies ranging from $642 million in Florida to $10 million in North Dakota. It depends upon where you're at, depends upon the populace. Nationwide, the number of delinquency cases involving detention increased 29% from 1985 to 2014. Of course, our population increases, but we still see an issue, a problem on the rise. So I ask you again, I asked you in the first slide, is it working? Do you know yet? All right. So as of 2015, more than 200,000 youths under correction supervision throughout the nation, 14% were placed in the most restrictive settings, such as training schools and detention centers, while 66% were placed in community-based programs like probation, day treatment, and outreach programs. So we're trying. We're really trying to get kids into programs to reduce recidivism and to change their way of life. We're really trying. Now is it starting to make sense? All right, so change gears a little bit. How about volunteer programs? Today, over 2,000 court-sponsored volunteer programs are in operation, using volunteers to assist probation officers in a variety of ways. Remember, I said probation officers, they may have hundreds of case files on their desk that, they have to go through monthly. It's incredible, and these volunteers really help. And the use of volunteers has become one of the most valuable ways to help offenders adjust to community life. So, when the time comes that you want to choose the internship rather than the practicum, or if you want to write the paper, that's fine. It's also valuable. You may want to choose a probation office. And I can tell you, they really use the interns in there for assistance with processing paperwork, filing. You sit in on interviews and so forth. They're needed. Let's talk about the improvement for girls. In 2012, the Georgetown Center on Poverty, Inequality, and Public Policy released a report on improving the juvenile justice system for girls. The existing juvenile justice system was originally designed for delinquent boys, and that doesn't adequately recognize the needs of girls. They're different. Equal rights and a lot of movements such as Me Too, they hold their weight. But in essence, the needs of young girls is they vary and they're different. The center concluded its report with a number of policy recommendations that it hopes will be enacted at the federal level. All right, so let's talk about the death penalty. In March 2nd, 2005, the U.S. Supreme Court banned executions of juveniles for crimes they committed before turning 18. But before that, we were executing juveniles. And there were some bad kids out there, and I'm not taking that away. But it just seems to me, and having been a cop for almost 3 decades, it's just extreme. I am not remiss in thinking of and caring for the victims. But when I look at this problem, obviously we think of the victims, but I think of a system failure. And not all cases, but I think of a system failure. We got to start out a lot earlier and focus on these kids a lot sooner before we get to this point. All right, so probation officer. What are their duties? Well, it permits juvenile offenders to remain in the community under the supervision of a probation officer, subject to certain conditions imposed by the court. Well, they do intake, supervision, and at the bottom, investigation. Requires social history report. What have they done? Where are they going? What promise do they have? So you'll want to be a probation officer. Let's watch these videos. I hope they let me play. They are. I'm trying.
The first thing that we say, we talk about unrealistic expectations. So whatever population that you're working with, whether it's court-appointed youth, detention centers, there's always some type of expectations that kind of go under the radar. So we want to make sure that our volunteers are aware, kind of going into our process, that you can't change a kid overnight. That's impossible, whether the kid is an A student or a D student, whether the kid is at risk or low risk. So we want to make sure that the volunteer just knows that they're planting seeds. They're planting seeds for a foundation of a better tomorrow, and we can't change the world overnight. So that's one of the best things that we can lend advice to our volunteers, is letting them know that it's not an overnight process, just to be patient and just know that you're planting ongoing seeds into the life of a child, and hopefully they'll see that grow and foster over time.
All right. How about the next one? Keep going here. How about this one?
My name is Justin Crow. I'm a probation parole officer with the Division of Community Corrections, North Carolina Department of Public Safety. I specialize in the school partnership program, which entails supervising high school kids on adult probation. I work closely with the kids and staff at all the schools to ensure the kids are going to school, doing their work, not causing any behavior problems at school. I keep updated reports on their attendance as well as any behavior problems that are going on. I feel like I have a pretty good relationship with the schools. Generally, if there's an issue going on, they will call me and let me know. And also, I try to make my presence felt at the school, just so they know that, hey, I'm around. Usually, I like to meet with, some of the principals or assistant principals and the students, and we'll meet with them if there are any behavior issues that are going on. We try and address those. And come together to try to resolve the problem if there is any. But I feel like we have a really good working relationship. And everybody's pretty much welcoming, when I come out to the schools. They kind of know, they got used to it. They kind of know what's going on when I'm out there. They know what I'm out there for. So it's a really good thing. We have a really good working relationship, I believe. The most rewarding part is, if you're able to make a difference in one of these kids' lives, when you first get them on probation, and if they do a complete turnaround, it's really satisfying to know that you've helped make a difference in that kid's life, and to know that hopefully you've produced a positive change in them, that will help them in the future, and just helping them learn the accountability and responsibility. And also, anytime, after they get off probation, if you see any of them out, it's always good to talk to them, see how they're doing, and see where they're at in life.
So you're invested in their lives. You heard what he said, make a difference. Couldn't agree more. I've known a lot of probation officers when I was working there. They're great guys and girls. All right, so how can we make a better system? Well, pursue excellence in the facility, just like you heard from them. Always do your best and focus on why you're there. A meaningful residential program requires a carefully thought out plan of activity or strategy. Management should be proactive. If you end up being a boss, don't just sit behind doors. Figure out new ways for your staff in your office to do better. Always looking to change. Professionalism should be held up as a goal for all staff. Cleanliness and orderliness of the facility are absolute necessities. The institutional environment must be safe for the youth and for staff. Both residents and staff must be treated with dignity and respect. Remember that first slide, the golden rule. Good programming is committed staff. By committed staff must be available to those youths who want to make positive changes in their lives. An effective system of accountability. We're not just letting them slide. They're accountable, and so are we. The services that are promised must be delivered. No open-ended false promises. Facilities, as much as possible, must have these following characteristics. The administrator must be a model of integrity. Again, back to management. All right, so the final exam. The final exam is proctored at all campuses. I probably have already sent, since I'm doing this so early, I've already sent instructions, but you have to go to a live campus. In other words, it's not online. You're going to have to go to one of 3 campuses and just keep an eye on your email, okay? All right. That's it. Thank you.